Okay. The body has been designed to renew itself through continuous self-correction. These same principles also apply to the healing of psyche, spirit, and soul. Peter Levine. So we are on week 7, healing trauma, and we're gonna talk about healing trauma for 2 weeks in a row. This week, we're mostly going to concentrate on healing personal trauma, and we'll see how much we get through, and whatever we don't get through today, we'll bring into next week. And next week, we're also going to bring in healing racialized, intergenerational, kind of collective conscious trauma. So let's take a moment to light our candle and create a container for grief. And I want to remind everybody again why we're doing this. So the whole course has 4 parts to it: stress, trauma, loss, and grief. And I've found that when we peel off stress and we peel into and heal trauma, when we release stress and we heal trauma, and we come to this new way of thinking about loss so that we can accept it, what's left is grief, and grief isn't something we get rid of. Grief is something we allow. So we're creating this container for grief so that while we're doing this work and we're peeling off the layers, what's left, that grief, has a place, a sacred place to sit and be held. And that we're creating this for not just myself and not just ourselves as a group, but we are creating this container that is going to become stronger and stronger so that everybody can use this container. We all can consciously start creating this container and hold this container and have grief become more of a normalized thing. So this week we're going to do a tuning in. We're going to check in about last week. We're going to go over today's material, and whatever else we do, we're always going to end with love. We'll start with love. So nice to see everybody with all my loving heart. So nice to see everybody. We'll have love all the way through. Beautiful. And we'll end with love. And Richard, would you tune us in today? Thank you.
Okay, folks, let's just make ourselves comfortable, shall we? Just making sure that we're settled, feeling supported, and whatever we're resting on. And if you need to shift around or move position, just to make ourselves a little more comfortable and rested and settled. That's just. Now let's just bring our attention and our awareness to our breath. Always to the breath. No matter what is happening around us and within us, always come back to the breath. And it's that steady rhythm, much like the heart, that brings us back to reality, back to now. Not what we think is going on, maybe sometimes not even what we feel. That can be, in its own way, a little illusory. Always to the breath, actual lived experience. Always back to the breath. And it's through the breath that we can become a little more knowing and intimate with our bodies. That same awareness that you are bringing to bear on your breath is the exact same focused yet expanded awareness you can bring to the sensation and the support and pressure of the seat beneath you. The support against your back, if you have it, your neck, the position of your hands near or on your body, the pressure of the floor into the base of your feet. These are true lived experiences. That's it, just resting with the breath and the body. No mind, no thought, no image to what comes next except your breath. And as you continue to focus your awareness on your breath and your body, perhaps just come to an awareness of any feelings that you might be becoming aware of right now that might be imposing themselves or saying hello, knocking on the door. Just greet them, but don't let them in. Say hello and let them pass. Allow them to walk on by. And it's through this awareness that we can become familiar with and present with and craft a relationship with our past traumas. It's where we engage them. It's where we hold them in our breath and in our bodies. Just being present with whatever is right now. Your lived experience as your breath and the physical sensations of your body that's being supported, and any other experiences that are entering your awareness now. Be with them. But you don't have to play. Be aware of them at the door, but you don't have to let them in. That's it. And the more we practice this simple discipline, that awareness strengthens, develops a will, develops boundaries. It's where we can say yes or no to an experience, an urge, an impulse, a desire. Some that might serve us and others that won't. Okay. Now returning fully to the sensations of your breath. The pressure of the ground beneath your feet and the seat beneath you. Just noticing the inward passage of cool air in through the nostrils and then out. And with that, come back into the room. You okay, Remy? Okay. Just notice that you're having trouble with your neck. Okay.
Thank you, Richard. So I'm going to stop the slide share and the recording so we can get together and talk about how this week has been. Since it's a smaller group, we can do that together. So give me a sec to pause. Stand up. Breathe those arms straight up in the air. Keep them up there. Exhale your shoulders down. Inhale the ribs wide. Exhale and hum. Let's do that a couple more times. And you can stay standing. You can keep breathing and humming. You can do a little qigong shaking. You can do some stretching, whatever your body might ask for. You can keep doing that while we continue with the slides so that you get some releasing of stress and start to peel off the layers of trauma that might be inside as we talk about healing trauma. So this week we're going to focus on how do we set ourselves up to heal trauma, and then what does it sound like, the call to heal trauma, and what are healing tools to heal trauma. So if you want to, you can keep stretching, you can take an eye break. You don't need to look at the screen right now. Look away from the screen, look at a distance, close your eyes if you want to. Trauma isn't destiny. Resma Menakem. So when we start thinking about working with trauma, with ourselves or others, we want to focus on comfort. So if you remember that bullet eye with the danger zone on the outside and the growth zone and the comfort zone in the middle, when we're wanting to learn, we want to kick ourselves out of the comfort zone and into our learning edge, into that constructive discomfort. When we're working with trauma, we want to pull ourselves into the comfort zone. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi. When we're working with trauma, we want to focus on the light. Much more focus on the light than the wound. Because we don't want to re-traumatize a trauma. We don't want to deepen the pathway, the neurological pathway that trauma already exists in. And we don't want to cause disassociation. So what we want to do is bring people present. Like in our tuning in, we became more present. This breath, this is where the healing happens, is in this moment. This is where we're able to deal with trauma and healing, is in this moment. We don't want to disassociate. So if we focus on what's called the unifying center, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, and our resilience and our strength and our growth mindset, and on building new pathways, that's how to deal with trauma. So I'll talk for a moment about the unifying center. The egg diagram, that is the picture of our psyche, is mostly unconscious material. And then we have this area that's the conscious field of awareness, that we become more conscious of the things in our lower unconscious, maybe the things that have shame attached to them, that don't want to be seen, they're hiding. In our higher unconscious, those places that got tucked aside where, somebody said you smile too much, you're too loud, you're too happy, you're too whatever. So we hide away, things up and down. And our middle unconscious, we're not aware of everything around us. So the more we dip down, we go up, we go out, we become more conscious. This conscious field of awareness has sort of an eye in the very center of it. It has an eye, meaning the big I, the bigger self, and it has an eye like the all-seeing eye. It's the part that understands, I am conscious of these things right now, and there's plenty I'm not conscious of right now. It understands a lot more. And this becomes our unifying center. Internal unifying center is the part that's inside of us that reminds us, right now I'm a little off. What do I need to do to get back on? What do I need to do? What am I unconscious about right now that I can bring into my conscious awareness and become more present? And an external I would be, when someone says, I'm a little off and I need some help, and we reach out to friends or to therapists or a coach, that becomes our external unifying center, someone we trust to help us come back to that core. And Jonas, would you talk with us about the growth mindset, please?
Yes. So the growth mindset, such an important thing to understand and embrace in this whole process. And I've sort of created, sort of identified, and then put together what I call the 5 levels of happiness, which we could also really call the spectrum of happiness, because you'll notice all the levels above that center line of acceptance have corresponding levels going down into what we could call the 5 levels of unhappiness. But mostly what I want to talk about here is that middle one, acceptance. And acceptance, there was this fascinating study done, it was probably within the past 10 years or so, that found that approximately 50% of our lives, according to this study anyway, approximately 50% of our lives is completely out of our control, in the sense that it's our DNA. It's We can't control who our parents or grandparents or great 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 grandparents are. We can't control the past. We can't control those things. So the best we can do, or the most we can really do, is accept that. Some people may see this as frustrating. Notice we go down into frustrating from acceptance, because that's 50% we can't control. But personally, I find this fascinating and also a bit relieving. That's a lot off. That's 50% of my burdens off my shoulders. Now, that also means that 50% is still on our shoulders, and that can lead us up or down. Uh, so 50% out of our control. 40% are things that, 10% are things that we do have some influence over. It's where we live. It's the experiences we have. It's the people we interact with on a day-to-day basis. We have some form of influence over that, right? However, the most encouraging part of this whole thing, and how it all ties into growth mindset, the remaining 40% of our lives is completely in our control, in the sense that it's our choices. It's how we respond to the 50% that we have no control over. It's how we respond to the 10% of our circumstances. It's our choices. And maintaining and being aware of the fact that we do have choices, we do have a choice in the matter. That is what enables us to have this growth mindset, believing that we can learn new knowledge, gain new skills, as opposed to a limited mindset, sort of buying into this learned hopelessness that we have no control over our circumstances. No matter what we try, we are who we are. Our current level of knowledge and skills is all that we're ever going to be. We might as well not even try, because external forces are always going to conspire against me. And so the key here is, of course, acceptance. It's the ground floor of both. Having a growth mindset moves us into fascination, which is really just this maintaining curiosity, asking, well, what do I have control over? Instead of focusing only on the problems, thinking about the opportunities and the possibilities. Well, what could be? As opposed to the frustration, which, let's be honest, we all get frustrated. There are lots of things to truly be frustrated about. This isn't about minimizing how frustrating things can be, but it's about asking, well, what kind of experience do we want? And are we willing to do the work, seek out the guidance from trusted mentors, trusted peers, trusted people in the community, the people in this group, and the people that we influence outside of this group? Are we willing to do the work to seek improving our circumstances instead of just hoping for a better future, but not being willing to do anything about it? And that's really the heart of what I want to say about having a growth mindset. Do we have any questions about this, or comments, or any additions to this? Remy, yes.
I noticed that there's affirmation on the bottom and affirmation on the top. So I don't know if you wanted to expand a little bit on that one specifically.
Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness, I could teach a whole course just on this one image here. So what we mean by this, by having affirmation on both sides. So if we think about this for a moment, we're fascinated, we're curious. So instead of focusing on problems, we focus on possibilities, which creates inspiration for inspired goals and dreams. Once we have those inspired goals and dreams, it helps us build a vision for a better future, which motivates us. It provides us, it encourages us to take action towards it. And once we move into that motivation phase and we're following through and we're doing our daily practices and we're doing all the things that we need to do, yeah, sure, things might still be frustrating occasionally, but we're staying motivated. And over time, when we keep that level of activity, we all of a sudden we start to achieve these small wins. We're hitting those checkpoints of things that we wanted to do. We're meeting new people, we're making new connections, new friends, and we're even perhaps even we're getting to the top of a mountain and we're seeing another one ahead. We're getting excited about those. These are these positive affirmations that we're on the right track. We're doing the right things. We're doing what we're supposed to do for our own journey. Whereas negative affirmations can be just as powerful, but for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
When we're frustrated, we hope for a better future, but instead of taking wishful action, we just sort of stay focused on complaining about it. Therefore, we're not inspired. We're confused. We don't know what to do because we haven't really thought about it. We haven't really done the work to really be curious and seek out the help. So we're confused because we don't know what to do. We're discouraged from taking any action because we have learned helplessness. And once we're discouraged, we fall into this sort of misery loves company, doesn't it? We love pity parties as much, even Mr. Positivity me. If we're having a really bad day, it can be fun to complain about it. It could be fun to commiserate with people, and yeah, it can be fun for a little while. But if we stay there for too long and everyone is just complaining and they're trying to one up each other and we're dragging each other down, that can be affirming, but for the wrong reasons. And it's hard to dig ourselves out of that because all of a sudden that becomes the normal. That becomes the culture.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes, this is just the way things are, which, if we're there for too long, all of a sudden we move down into the lowest form of unhappiness, which in this model we call despair. This isn't to say that it's impossible to dig ourselves out. It's just that it's going to be easier to dig ourselves out if we do it a little bit before we get to that point. Does that make sense, Remy? Happy to clarify.
Great question. That's such a great catch. And thank you, Jonas, so much.
Growth mindset. You're welcome. It's so important. Realizing that we do have choice, even when it seems like we don't have choice. I got this idea from that amazing book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Oh, yeah, oh, yes, you love that too, Remy.
Oh, such a hard book to read as much as I love it.
The most striking thing I got from that was about choice. Even when it looked like he didn't have, even when it looked like he was disempowered from choice, he realized that he had a choice in how to respond to his prisoner, to his the people who were keeping him imprisoned. If this person can recognize choice is available, then surely me with my with my comparatively minuscule problems, I think I'm going to be okay.
Oh, thank you. So another thing that I wanted to cover is building new pathways. So as we use the same neural pathways for years and years over and over again, they move into deeper portions of the brain. And by the age of 25, neurologists or those who are studying neuroplasticity are finding that those pathways in our brain that our brain relies on are so deeply embedded it's hard to break free of them. That's why we have habits. That's why it's hard to break bad habits and to change a habit. And one hypothesis of this is that the brain chooses the most energy efficient path. So like Jonas's example of the triangle going up or the triangle going down, the more we use one, the more efficient it is for the brain to keep going in that direction. So when the brain is not fully formed, when we're younger, there's a lot of flexibility and plasticity. But when we're older and our brain is older, and we have an adult brain past the age of 25, the brain may no longer learn or alter ways of thinking as easily, but we can still learn. It can happen. And there's these ways of doing that. One is to focus on an energy intensive challenge, like reading new books and joining this group. That's an energy intensive challenge that we're doing right now. An energy intensive challenge requires conscious processing of new input, conscious decision making, complex problem solving, memorizing new complex concepts, planning, strategizing, self-reflection, regulating our emotions and channeling energy away from them, exercising self-control and willpower. And all of this keeps the brain agile. It keeps us using areas that we don't normally activate. It helps us to take on new challenges that push us to mental and physical exhaustion because we force the brain to change the way it works when we do this. And this is how new neurons are grown and strengthened to connect to existing pathways. Repeating this challenge is also very important. If we do it just one time, the progress will be lost. So newly formed neural pathways are delicate. They need repetition to reinforce them. Only with practice can they become our default ways of thinking. And I want to point out this, that depending on the complexity of the activity, it can take 3 to 5 months to create a new brain map in the motor cortex equal in complexity to an old one. So when you want to break out of a habit that's not working and you want to break into a new way of thinking and being, it takes 3 to 5 months to really solidify that. And that's why this group and a lot of more intensive kind of classes are around 3 to 5 months. So this is a 16-week course. It's a 4-month course. And that was very deliberately created because we need this time to not only come into some new ways of thinking, but to solidify a new way of thinking, right? We also want to adopt a healthy living, low stress lifestyle. So stress, poor nutrition, too little sleep, tobacco, alcohol, drug misuse, these are detrimental to brain development and they keep the brain using old pathways. The brain will send its resources through the blood supply to areas that we're focusing attention and concentration on, areas that we have a desire to put more energy into. So if we have a healthy lifestyle while we're developing this new way of thinking, that's what we're going to develop is a healthy lifestyle. If we have a desire to have a healthy living, low stress lifestyle, we're going to create that. So also when we talk about trauma and deal with trauma and heal trauma, we want to focus on the connection to the present moment, to the self, the personal self in the present moment, to each other in the present moment, to nature in the present moment, to source in the present moment. So I really appreciated the tuning in today because that really focused us on this present moment, that this breath, breathing in and out, like right now, This brings us to this present moment. Me looking at your faces and off of the slideshow brings me to this connection with you personally. Anything that we can do to bring ourselves into the connection in this present moment. So now we're going to talk about the call to heal. What does the call to heal sound like? It sounds like a feeling in the body. It sounds like constriction. Constriction points to the place that needs healing. It feels like discomfort, tightness, stuckness, heaviness, fogginess, and emotional pain. We want to pay attention to this. We want to move unconscious material into the conscious material. When we do this, though, we have to be careful because it's an opportunity to heal the wound. It's also touching the wound. So we need to move slowly. We need to slow the process of working with trauma down. We know that just below that constriction, there's going to be something to look at, and it's going to be something that's been hiding. So again, I want to kind of go back to our egg diagram, that this is a nice slow process. We're dipping down, we're coming back to our higher sense of self, our connection to others and to source and to that which is larger than self. We're dipping up, we're dipping out. We're bringing these in slowly. We're staying connected. We're going inside of ourselves and then outside of ourselves to be a part of something larger while we're working with all our parts inside. It's really important to do this because part of the healing is accepting these parts that have been hidden. And in doing so, we can become a fuller version of ourselves. We become whole. So it is important to do this. We just have to do it carefully and slowly. And if you're not standing up and you want to, stand up, do some breathing, do some qigong shaking, do some stretching. Because what we're doing is uncovering the idea that we have trauma inside, and sometimes that's frightening. So we want to keep moving in and out of talking about and healing trauma. Keep moving your physical body in ways that make you feel comfortable. Come back to comfort. Come back to the present moment. So again, you can take an eye break. You can look away if you'd like to, not look at the screen. And now we're going to talk about tools to heal psychological trauma. These tools that we're going to talk about today and next week, they're a drop in the ocean. There are many, many tools. These are just the ones that we've chosen to talk about. The first tool is parts work. And we've talked quite a bit about parts work from a psychosynthesis perspective. That subpersonality work is parts work. There's other modalities that use parts work. There's something called the shadow self. Carl Jung started talking about the shadow, and that's basically our parts that are hidden. Internal family systems uses parts work, uses subpersonality kind of work. Excuse me, and there's something else called integral life practice. So when you come back to the slides, just tap on these resources that you can check out and learn more about these as different modalities to do parts work. I'm going to come back to subpersonality work because we've already introduced that. So basically, we want to identify with these parts of ourselves as a part of myself. This is a part of myself. That insecure part of me is a part of myself. It's not who I am. It's a part. I want to identify with it. I want to get to know it. And then I want to disidentify from it. I want to say, it is a part of me. I am larger than it. And that in that way, I can help heal it. So some of you may remember that one of the sheets that we had sent out about subpersonality work, it includes things like you name it. Name that part playfully. Describe who and what it is. Why is it there? How does it serve me? What needs is it trying to meet for me? How does it limit me? What needs does it block? What are its qualities, wants, distortions? What strategies does it use that don't work to meet my needs, my larger needs? What did it rise from, like in the past? Who helped create it? How is it presently displayed? How do you know when it's in charge? And what triggers it to rise up and come out? So these are great things to do when you're doing subpersonality work. And something that we hadn't talked about is something called pillow work or chair work, where you can take your sub and you can place it next to you outside of your body. You can imagine whatever the sub looks like. Maybe it's a child, maybe it's an entity of some kind. And settle it down or watch where it wants to go in the room. And then have different places where you sit in the largest sense of self. And you can actually move from one seat to another, but you always come back to your largest sense of self. At the beginning and the end and in between, all this work with subpersonalities. This is one way to work with subs. Psychodrama is another tool that is used. It was developed by Jacob Levy and his wife Zerka Marino. Jacob Levy and Zerka Marino. They are the ones who coined group therapy and group psychotherapy, those terms. It's a creative therapeutic approach used with individuals or groups, mostly with groups, in conjunction with or as an alternative to other therapies. It's considered an action therapy, not a talk therapy. It uses guided drama and role-playing to work through problems. And I put a link on this slide to the Marino Psychodrama Society to find out lots more about it. The goals of psychodrama are to bring new insight, or to resolve old issues, or to practice new skills and behaviors. It works especially well for people who are victims of trauma, who struggle with substance abuse or alcoholism. And it has steps. Begin with guided warm-up exercises. So Res Momentum, if anyone has started reading the book, My Grandmother's Hands, he talks about tuning ourselves in together with humming, with having a meal together, with rocking together. And you'll see when you start watching movies about different other cultures that, especially cultures where there's a lot of historic trauma and oppression, that they do these things. They're rocking together. They're talking together. They're singing together. They're humming together. They're eating together. This is the beginning of doing this work, is getting in sync, getting everybody in the same place together, calming ourselves down together. And then in psychodrama, you identify the issue that you want to explore or correct. It could be a past situation or a dream or preparation for a future event. You choose elements. Elements are the protagonist, who represents the main elements or problem, auxiliary egos and audience, who bring out underlying beliefs and bring issues to the surface and offer support. And then there's a director, and then there's the stage, which is also an element. And then what you do is reenact specific scenes with therapeutic guidance using what's called deep action methods. There's about 6 deep action methods. Mirroring is a person in the group acts as a stand-in for the protagonist, so that the protagonist can see the situation from a more objective outside perspective. This provides a better chance for the protagonist to see themselves as others do also. There's doubling. A person speaks for another person in the group using a supportive tone. This is helpful when the person isn't able or willing to speak for themselves. Role reversal. Participants get to reenact the scene multiple times, playing various roles each time, so they can experience the situation in fresh and new ways. Future projection. Many of the scenes are around issues and experiences that the participants have already lived through. A future projection scene is one that a participant will soon experience or will experience in the future. This approach gives participants the chance to demonstrate how they will act when the situation occurs. Playback theater. The group spontaneously acts out one person's particular life story or life experience. The therapist allows the drama to unfold in unpredictable ways. This process allows the group to see patterns within different situations and current problems and issues that stem from childhood events. After this is all done, the reenactment, there's a discussion and expression of feelings that maybe you're unable to express during the trauma or distress. Emotions and responses that you would have expressed if you were able. And then the scene is repeated with alternate endings. This is a trauma healing method that is used really, really, really well. Really works well. So psychodrama allows participants to tap into sensory motor level and release pent-up emotions, to speak through actions not dependent on verbal communication. It brings past experiences into the present and processes them. Helps us learn to identify trauma triggers. It helps us to form connections with each other when it's in groups and there's a shared trauma. This works really well if people experience, like it's in a whole neighborhood, inner city neighborhood that has dealt with oppression, or when it's like after a hurricane, those kinds of traumas. It helps participants know that they're not alone. It helps consciously connect the mind and the body. And it helps reframe experiences and connect disconnected parts. So I got to see an amazing psychodrama performance on stage. And this was 2006 or 7. And these folks were teenagers from Arizona who had grown up in families where drug abuse was common. And maybe their parent was neglectful and not present, or present in a way that the kid had to take care of their parent because the parent was using. And these kids stood on the stage, and each one said a line from somebody else's story. And they went from 1 through 5 people saying one line at a time about their story. And it just went from one person to the next, running one story, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then the fifth. And it was so powerful. Not only was it powerful for them and for us as an audience, but I was sitting next to the mom of one of the boys who said to me, she was in tears, and she said to me, I am in sobriety. And I will want to stay in sobriety because I know now what it's done to my child. I can see through this. Every time I see this performance, I can see what I need to do for my child. It is so powerful for so many people, even the audience, to do this work. And I want to move out of psychodrama and into symbiotic healing. So this is another tool for healing trauma. And sometimes I just want to say that it's not about healing trauma. It's how to learn to live with trauma in a way that, I have a good life. I still have trauma that I'm dealing with, but I have a good life. And I wanted to bring in this piece from Cliff Ishigaki's essay that he wrote called The Humanity of Grief. It was an amazing, very long, amazing essay, but this part I thought was pretty phenomenal. He said, to move toward the human and humane, we must head for meaning, which can sustain and nourish each of us. In the 12 Steps program, one of the consistent tools used is filling a service role in a meeting or to others. This becomes the basis of the transpersonal in a dark time. Being of service opens us up to the greater topography of the land around us. Yes, we can find ourselves trapped in darkness, but service becomes the opening to look for ways to enlarge one's definition of life. Just love that. And Jonas, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Yes, and this is the perfect place for this because it really speaks to both Cliff's quote, the idea of being in service to others, while also tying into psychodrama as well. In 2008, I put on my own psychodrama, even though I didn't realize that's what I was doing, and I did my own version of it. As you all know, I am a magician, as one of my various skill sets. So when I experienced a traumatic event a number of years ago, one of my healing tools that I turned to was my craft, my art, performance. I created this show called It Just Happened the Other Day, a true story, and it blended all of my passions with magic and performance, with music. I was performing magic, but also playing music. I played the saxophone in here. I brought in poetry. I brought in dance. I brought in all these different modalities to tell my story and create a more positive and more hopeful ending for that story. And I like to share with you, I saved it. This is the ticket to opening night of the show. This is one of my most prized possessions because I count this as one of the checkpoints, one of those affirmation moments in my healing journey. Towards healing. So all I want to say, and this picture on the screen is a scene from that show, a very poignant scene where I won't get into it here, but everyone is crying at this point in the show, but it's hopeful tears. So what I want to encourage you folks to do is think about your own talents, your own passions, your own craft, and how you might be able to use those in your own form of psychodrama, even if you don't have a formal group to do it with. Again, one of the reasons I play the ukulele is as a form of healing, not just for myself, but really for the people who engage in it, the people who listen to the music. Just like with this play, being in service to others, people can walk away from these experiences, witnessing them, feeling changed themselves, feeling touched by it. So being in service to others through our craft can be both healing and therapeutic for both performer and audience member.
Thank you, Jonas. And, just raise your hand if you've had this experience. I know, Allie, you are a performer. I don't know who else. I know, Nancy, that you sing for people. Who's had this experience of using your craft, using your gift, performing for others? And, for people being moved, you're moving yourself and other people are moved. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. We can really relate to this. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jonas.
Thank you, Jonas. That was beautiful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, brother.
And these next couple of slides, I'm going to hand the mic to Richard.
Right, okay. Right, on the EMDR, this isn't a therapy that I apply myself. But I've heard great stories told, actually.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, Richard. This one's mine still.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I don't mind riffing. Go ahead.
I'm looking at it going, no, wait, what? Oh, okay, sorry. All right, so EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I do not do EMDR, but I suggest that anyone who has trauma and is stuck, that you find a practitioner who does EMDR and check it out. It's a shorter treatment than most psychotherapy. And if you want to get through a trauma more quickly, it's a way that works really well. It's, basically moving your eyes back and forth. And in fact, the person who started this, Francine Shapiro, this is just a less than 3 minute video I thought we could watch just to see what Francine says about it.
It's called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's being practiced by some 7,000 therapists across the country, and the numbers are growing. It's a combination of traditional talk therapy with something that sounds bizarre. Here's how it works. The therapist rapidly moves his or her fingers, or an object like a wand, before the patient's eyes for several seconds at a time, while the patient talks about an upsetting image. We can't show you the actual hand movements because therapists are concerned that untrained people improperly mimicking the technique might possibly cause harm, but we can give you a pretty good sense of it. This is an actual EMDR session.
Okay.
The therapist who is facing us is about to start.
Okay, just notice that.
The client is dealing with panic attacks. Look at his eyes and watch how they follow the therapist's wand, and how, after he does this for several seconds, he gets very emotional.
Okay, plunk it out.
The procedure is repeated several times in the session,
Take a deep breath.
along with more traditional therapy. This eye movement technique was developed by Dr. Francine Shapiro. While on a walk one day, she noticed that when she thought about something disturbing, her eyes moved in a certain way, and then the thought no longer upset her.
Then I started doing it deliberately to see if it would work, and the same thing happened. The thought shifted away, and when I brought it back, it wasn't as disturbing.
If I had seen you that day in the park, what would I have noticed about your eyes?
That they were moving very rapidly in a diagonal, just flickering up and down very, very rapidly. So I thought I stumbled upon some mind process that worked with thoughts. And that's what was so fascinating, because I hadn't been doing it deliberately, but I noticed it happening.
Now, translating this into something you could use on other people, you found what? People's eyes couldn't move that way by instinct or naturally?
Right, and I had to start using my hand to guide them to make similar types of eye movement.
Dr. Shapiro isn't sure why eye movements are effective, but believes it's connected to the rapid eye movements, or REM, that occur in the brain during dream sleep. One theory is that REM sleep helps us cope with upsetting incidents, in effect making life's nightmares more manageable by a process still not understood. A shock to the system, like war or rape, interrupts that natural process and keeps us from coping.
When a trauma occurs, that processing mechanism gets disrupted. It doesn't work. The brain goes into shock, and the mind just repeats the information over and over again. When we deal with the eye movement in the office, we seem to be able to open up that blocked processing and accelerate it.
All right. So I wanted to introduce you to EMDR, just in case you hadn't heard about it or had only heard about it peripherally. Now you know just a little bit more about it. Also, in the slide before that, if you check on the EMDR Institute website, there's so much good information, and there are YouTube videos that tell a lot more, show a lot more. This video that we just watched is old. It's old, like 1980s old, 1970s or 80s old. So there's been a lot of information since then too about how this works. There's been a lot of MRI studies about it, so you can read more about it more later. Tapping. Tapping is also used in EMDR, but tapping is also its own modality of healing. Tapping has been found to be extremely helpful with healing trauma. And I put in a few different places that are working with tapping in different ways. So the emotional freedom technique is this idea of when you do exercises to get your muscles to be fatigued and they start shaking, and then you lay down and you let your body shake out the trauma. And it kind of goes back to when animals have just had been chased for food, and then they find a field, and they lay down and they get very, very still, and then they start shaking, and then they're done and they get up and they go back to their herd and don't seem to be carrying the trauma with them. I certainly have had lots of experience with allowing shaking to release trauma, so I can attest personally to that as being a very good healing technique. So here's, again, there's just some different places that you can come back to later and check on. Donna Eden does an energy medicine routine that most of us know about. Those who come to my morning group know about for sure. And she does like a 7-minute routine. I've turned it into an hour routine. But right now I thought we could do some tapping together. So I'm going to play this and just follow along.
Welcome to the TappingSolution.com. I am Jessica Ortner, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Tapping Solution for Weight Loss and Body Confidence. And in this short video, I am going to introduce you to the tapping points. Just by learning these 9 points, you can start your journey to relieve stress. Many of these points you may already intuitively use. A lot of times when we're feeling anxious or stressed, we go like this, or we put our hand on our chest. Now we're using these points in a very conscious manner. So the very first point that you need to learn is the side of the hand. And it doesn't matter what side of the body you tap on. This point is called the karate chop point. You got it. And tap along with me so you can get comfortable with these points. The next point is the eyebrow point. And this is where the hair begins on your eyebrow, right on that bone. There you go. You got it. Now you're going to follow that bone until you find yourself on the side of your eye. So it's not your temple, it's right on that bone. The next point is underneath the eye. So once again, you follow that bone until you find yourself right underneath the eye. And as you're tapping, you might notice that some points are more sensitive than others. The next point is underneath the nose. So right between your upper lip and your nose. Then we have the under the lip point, or some people call it the chin point, and it's right underneath your lip on that crease between your chin and your lip. The next one is the collarbone point. So you can use your whole hand to tap on your chest, or you can feel that U-shaped bone, and if you go down an inch and over an inch on either side, you're going to hit that point. Perfect. The next point is underneath the arm, and it's about a hand width from your armpit. For women, this is about where your bra strap lies. And then the last point, and yes, I know it looks silly, but a great point to hit a lot of these meridians is right on the top of the head. There you go. So those are the 9 points. Now, when you want to start to tap, the first thing to do is to notice what is really coming up. What's your most pressing issue? Are you nervous about a deadline at work? Are you anxious about a phone call or some news that you've heard? Whatever it is, get clear on what's creating the anxiety in your body. Because when we are feeling stressed, we're not just experiencing stress in our head, we feel it with our whole body, which is why it's so powerful to use a stress relief technique that incorporates the body. So you start by tapping on the side of the hand, and you start with the setup statement. The setup statement is pretty easy, and it sets you up for the process. You state your challenge, and you end it with a phrase of acceptance, or simply letting yourself know that you're okay. So it sounds something like this. Even though I'm really anxious about this meeting, I accept how I feel. Or even though I'm really stressed about this upcoming event, I accept how I feel and I give myself permission to relax. There's a lot of different ways to do the setup statement, but what's key is to let yourself know that you honor how you feel. Because too often when we're trying to move past an emotion, we're fighting against it. When we allow ourselves to accept where we are and how we feel, we open ourselves up to releasing it. Then you tap on the rest of the points by simply sharing how you feel. So you can pretend that you're calling a friend and you're just complaining, you're just telling them how you feel. This is the tape that you're probably already running in your head. So as a short example, going with this theme of being nervous about a meeting, it would start with tapping on the side of the hand and saying, even though I'm so nervous about this upcoming meeting, I accept how I feel and I give myself permission to relax. You would do that 3 times, and now you tap on the rest of the points while giving a voice to how you feel. And this sends a calming signal to your brain, letting your brain know that even though you're nervous about this meeting, that you are safe, that it's safe to relax. And when you can relax, you can be more resourceful and creative and do a great job at your meeting. So then you would go to the eyebrow point. and say something like this: stress around this meeting. Side of the eye, I'm nervous I won't do well. Under the eye, I care so much about this meeting and it's causing me anxiety. Under the nose, the stress around this meeting. Chin, all of these expectations. Collarbone, this tension I feel in my body. Underneath the arm, all this stress around this meeting. Top of the head, all this stress around this meeting. If you're not sure what to say, like I mentioned before, you can pretend you're talking to a friend, or you can just say the same thing, honoring how you feel, the stress around this meeting, the stress around this meeting. And once we bring down the intensity, we can focus on some positive phrases. Because when we pull out the weeds, we're able to now seed. We can actually say positive things to ourselves and we believe them. So once you feel better, and that's the key, when you feel better, you can move to something more positive. So it would sound something like this. I'm prepared. Side of the eye. I'm calm and confident. Under the eye. I'm ready to share my ideas. Under the nose. I feel strong and confident. Chin. This is my time. Collarbone. I am ready for this meeting. Under the arm, I feel calm and confident. Top of the head, now is my time. So you can incorporate how you're feeling, letting go of the anxiety, and when you're able to move that, then you bring in the more positive, and then it actually feels real. So next time you tap, notice, as soon as you start feeling better, try to put in some positive statements. You'll get to the point where you can think about that meeting and your body feels relaxed. And when you feel relaxed, then it's easier to bring in more empowering thoughts. Now, when you tell yourself that you can feel confident and prepared, you can believe yourself because you let go of the anxiety that was coming up with those thoughts. So that's a very, very quick introduction on where the tapping points are and how to tap. But here at thetappingsolution.com, we have a lot more resources so you can really learn how to get the best results. Well, it's been an honor to introduce tapping to you. I hope this is just the beginning. And until we meet again, take care and keep tapping. Welcome to the Tap.
And there you have that. So another tapping solution is bilateral stimulation. And it's called the butterfly hug, and some of us here know about the butterfly hug. Just gonna do a little bit of butterfly hugging with you right now. So cross your hands over your heart.
Welcome to.
Your thumbs are in the middle, they're like the body of the butterfly, and your fingers are like the butterfly wings. And you want to tap side to side, whatever speed works for you. I will talk about this for a second. So the butterfly hug was developed by Lucina Artigas during the hurricane in Mexico in 1992. And she found that this particular part was very self-soothing for victims of the hurricane and for groups of people. She did this with groups of people. So close or soften your eyes. Continue butterfly tapping. Breathe slowly and deeply, breathing into your abdomen or breathing into your lungs so that your diaphragm pushes down into your abdomen. Imagine yourself going somewhere calm and safe. Notice images, colors, sounds, smells, feelings, physical sensations. Notice what comes up as if you were watching clouds passing by. No judgment. And at some point, if you want to come back to the slides, you can play this video with some music, continue your butterfly tapping. And you can continue to butterfly tap. You can come back to that slide sometime. And now I'm going to hand the slideshow to Richard. Thank you.
Okay, folks. So on entheogenic medicines, I guess we can use a commonly used term of psychedelics. I mean, the consensus media will use terms like as hallucinogenic drugs. Well, that's not really a true representation of what this means and what they do. So entheogenic medicines are basically any awareness changing compound like LSD, psilocybin, magic mushrooms, MDMA, and a compound called ayahuasca, which is actually something that people from the Amazon have been creating for millennia as part of their spiritual practices. Now, there's actually been extensive research over the past 15 to 20 years around the application of psychedelics as therapeutic methods. There's been great inroads done across the piece, including MDMA, actually. The Molly or ecstasy drug or compound is becoming more extensive as a treatment for trauma, particularly for combat veterans, which is gaining traction in the US at the moment. Now, I want to really keep this brief, folks, just to point you towards some resources. Now, there's some. The psychedelics today provides fairly easy to consume and accessible route into documents, courses, and chat groups. There's the author Michael Pollan brought out a book a couple of years ago. It's well worth reading, and there's a link to a collection of resources that are well worth following up on if you're interested. There's a group called Psychedelic Support, which provides access to psychedelic trained therapists and other related resources, and MAPS, or the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. That's a US-based organization and has actually championed the foundation of entheogens as medicines and therapeutic methods, not only in the US but across the whole world. So it's well worth, if you're interested, it's worth following up on that. But I will add a caveat: make sure that you don't just do this. You must do this in a supportive environment with people who are trained. That would be my advice on that. You move on to the next slide there, please. Amy. Cool. Okay, so holotropic breath work. Well, holotropic breath work doesn't involve any psychedelics, but it does produce altered states of awareness through rapid, concentrated breathing. And it was actually a method that was created by a gentleman called Professor Stanislav Grof and his wife as a response to the lockdown towards the end of the 60s on psychedelic compounds. And he was one of the pioneers in applying LSD in psychotherapy. And yeah, he's the whole Growth Foundations, it's an incredible resource. So there are some follow-up links that I would suggest if you're interested. Go to the holotropic breathwork site through these two links, and there's an accessible introduction to holotropic breathwork in the last link. It's really just homework off your own back, and if you're interested, reach out to these people.
Thank you, Richard, so very much. And we are going to save some of this for next week. But I wanted to say that I have another book recommendation for y'all. I'm so sorry. You know, audiobooks are really great in the car. That's all I can say. So this is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And it's a wealth of knowledge about trauma in the body and the neurological background to all of it. I also put in this link about David Treleaven, who his focus is on trauma-sensitive mindfulness, that when we go into mindful practice like meditation, often trauma comes up, and that we should be aware of this. We should be aware of what to do with it. And that's his focus. So that's another good person to check out sometime. And this week, I suggest that we practice some of the things that we learned about today. Don't practice, psychedelics. Maybe check it out, but don't practice it. Unless you have trauma that you really want to move, and you find someone that you trust, and you find an association, and you do it in a very formatted way. But these other things that we've gone through, some of these we haven't gone through, so I may change the slides. We all know Qigong shaking, so keep doing your Qigong shaking. We haven't talked about release and replace and the healing affirmations and restorative yoga, so this part maybe we'll save for next week. But for now, explore the healing tools and websites and practice the healing tools that you feel comfortable with. And now we will close up with love, love, love.
This is my favorite part.
This is your favorite part? Yeah. Let's just be loving for a moment. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this.
Openness and for sharing.
Time to go,
Thank
folks.
you, everybody.
I have another webinar to prep, so speak soon. Be
Love
in touch.
all.
Wonderful to see you all.
Yummy. See you, folks.
I love you.
Happy weekend.
I love you, Nancy. I love you, Ami. I love you.
I love you, Ali. I love you, Jonas. Love you, Nancy. Love you, Remy.
Thank you. Feeling the love.
Feeling the love.
See you guys. Bye.
See you later.
See you next time.
Rest of your weekend.
Great session today.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
There's a point where I'm like doing it. I'm reading the slides. I'm facilitating. I'm teaching. There's a point where I kind of drop in and I'm here. And everything gets quiet. And it's almost like everybody just got present. I can feel I felt when it happened. It was very, very cool.
When did it happen for you? When did you feel it?
I don't remember now, but when it happened, I felt it. It was just like dropped in. I think I need to have us do tuning in before we start the group. Like usually we tune ourselves in before we get into the group.
That's true. Yeah, we didn't do that today. Yeah, so that's I'm going to make note of that to remind us to tune in during pre-session. That's a great point.
Mhm.
We just sort of dove right into talking about things, and
Mhm.
which is okay.
Mhm.
I thought today went well.
Yeah. We all took a lot more, which was nice. You know, you and Richard had a lot more to share today, which was nice.
Yeah, I like it when it's a back and forth.
Mhm.
I really also want to point out I really liked uh, the the discussion as a group. Remy and Allie and Nancy, they had so much to share, and we could
Mhm.
all be a part of their excitement for. I thought that was really important. It went a little longer than we usually let it go, but I think that's not only okay, it's encouraged,
Mhm.
because having the group share. Oh, it's still recording, by the way. Yeah.